Hello and welcome back to one of those weird videos that I do in between podcasts each week. Because I have told everyone that I'm not going to continue watching She-Hulk, I thought why not do a tier list of all of the other MCU movies and properties up to She-Hulk, just so the audience has a better idea of where I stand with where everything is currently placed in the MCU. So I'm not going to do it in timeline order or the order that the movies came out in. There is a specific order on here that the person who made the tier list has put everything in. So that's the order I'm going to do it in because it will just save time. So let's get right into this with Captain America Civil War. Now, this is a good place to start because this is probably my favourite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. So it's immediately, that's the thing, I don't know whether or not to put it in A or S because as an MCU movie I feel like it deserves to be an S, but as a movie as a whole I'll probably say A. So this is tricky. I'll do it as a film as a whole, so I'll put it in A. So this is a good start. Avengers, or in the UK, Avengers Assemble. I remember this being the third MCU movie I saw in the cinema. I saw Iron Man 1, I saw Iron Man 2, and I had no clue that there was a connected universe. I kind of thought that they were just standalone movies, and one of my good friends at the time was like, oh, come see this movie with me. What's it called? The Avengers. What the hell's that? And being like, oh, Iron Man's in this. And then getting a little bit confused with stuff to do with the Tesseract and then seeing other superheroes. But after it came out, I went back and watched the other movies and then watched Avengers again. And it's one of those movies that I feel like was one of the turning points in cinema. It was really the turning point for superhero movies, and I still think it's an incredibly solid movie. I don't think it's as good as maybe it used to be. I think the way it's filmed and the way it's lit reminds you more of a TV show, which is a criticism that lots of people have had of it, but it's one that I do genuinely agree with. So I'm going to put it in B. We'll give it a high B. Avengers Age of Ultron. So I don't hate this movie as much as a lot of people do. I don't love it either. I feel like Ultron should have been a more menacing villain, but I really like the fight scene between Hulk and Iron Man in the city. That's one of the highlights. The introduction of Scarlet Witch is pretty cool because she ended up being a really good character up until recently. So I don't really have a lot to say on this movie. It's disappointing compared to the first one, but it's definitely not as bad as some of the later MCU properties. So let's go B, low B. Avengers Infinity War. This is much better than the previous two Avengers movies in my eyes. How it was the first part of the end, essentially. I feel like the MCU kind of died after Endgame, with the exception of a couple of properties which you'll find out about later on. Infinity War, I really liked when I saw it in the cinema on day one in a packed room. It was lovely, it was great. Fun fact as well about this and Endgame. When Endgame came out, it was the only midnight release I've ever been to. They were doing a double bill of Infinity War and Endgame, so it started at about 7 no, not 7 o'clock, must have been about 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something, and you went from Infinity War, about 10-minute break so you could go to the toilet, come back and watch Endgame, and that was one of the best experiences I've ever had in the cinema. Infinity War, I don't think it's as good as Endgame, but I do still really like it as a movie. The ending was quite bold, unfortunately. One of my old friends, who I'm not friends with anymore because he was a cock, thought it'd be a great idea to spoil all the deaths in the movie for me before we went to go watch it, literally that morning before we saw it. But still a great movie. I'm going to put it in A. Endgame is my favourite Avengers movie, just simply for the fact that the last battle and the last hour or so is phenomenal in my eyes. So many moments. Iron Man's death scene still gets to me now whenever I see it. The Avengers Assemble moment was amazing as well, and seeing Captain America wield Mjolnir was a moment that made me audibly speak out in the cinema, which never usually happens apart from laughter. So again, everything about this movie and Infinity War kind of work for me as a two-parter, like a 5.5 hour movie. It works so well to me, so this is going in A as well. I'm gonna put it there. So moving on to Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie has a bit of significance to me because, not to get into too much of my personal life, but in 2014 my mum got diagnosed with cancer, and as a way to try and cheer me up about it and sort of cheer the family up, we decided to go see Guardians of the Galaxy because I liked the Marvel movies. The first 10 minutes of this movie are Peter Quill's mum dying of fucking cancer. So looking back on it now, it's kind of funny to think about because my mum survived and everything. You know, she's been cancer free for, well, however many years it's been since Guardians of the Galaxy came out. But all of us still really enjoyed the movie besides the first 10 minutes or so. I guess I remember everyone, all three of us, going to see a movie, trying to cheer ourselves up about the sad news and just sitting there being like, I don't think I can watch the rest of this. But that being said, incredibly solid movie. Still think it's incredibly solid now. I don't love it as much as the 3 and A, but I do think it's a very solid B tier movie. So, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit divisive. I'm going to put it in a place and then I'm going to explain why it's in that place. Don't be mad at me. D. I don't like this movie very much. I don't think Ego was a particularly good villain, even though it's not the longest MCU movie. It felt like one of the longest. It felt longer than Endgame, which is 40 minutes longer than it. This just, I don't know, it still had funny moments. Parts of the story I did enjoy, but there's quite a lot of it that I'm forgetting as well, even trying to discuss why I put it in D. I just remember not particularly liking it when it first came out, watching it again about a year and a half later, and feeling the exact same about it, so I'm going to leave it in the D. Ant-Man. This is a movie that a lot of people think is on the lower end of the MCU, and I can see why. It's quite a small scale thing, it doesn't really connect to anything else. It could have been better if Edgar Wright stayed on to direct it, but he didn't, for various reasons. And the movie we got, I think, is okay. I've seen it twice, I enjoyed it a lot the first time in the cinema, I saw it again at home, and it's okay. It's a good C tier movie in my eyes. Ant-Man and the Wasp, on the other hand, ooh, it's tricky. I'll put it in D. It's about on the same level as Guardians of the Galaxy 2 for me. It's just Ant-Man and the Wasp was kind of pointless. It was completely outside of the MCU for the most part. The story wasn't particularly engaging. The villain wasn't particularly engaging. The comedy worked for the most part in my eyes, but it just, after having Infinity War come out and then having Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think that was the movie right after that, just, no, it's kind of like, this is great, this is not so much great. It just felt like a filler movie to me. Doctor Strange 1, I can safely put in the lower end of the B column. This is a movie I have only seen once, but it's one of those movies that I do remember scenes from, even though it came out 6 years ago and I do remember it. So even though I don't have a lot to say on Doctor Strange 1, it's a pretty good movie in my eyes. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Doctor Strange. That's as far as it goes in my eyes. Iron Man 1. This came out in 2008. I was about 7.5 when it came out. Went to the cinema to watch it, and I just remember absolutely loving it. Seeing it again in recent years, I don't love it as much. It's kind of a similar viewpoint as I have to the first Avengers movie, but I do think it is still an incredibly solid movie, and some of the CGI in this movie holds up better than the CGI in some of the later Marvel movies. So, given that and how it basically started the whole cinematic universe off, excluding the Incredible Hulk, which we'll get to later, I'm going to put it in the B. Put it in the B. Cool. And also, I may just tell you now that I'm not going to arrange all these into the perfect order. I started doing it. Obviously, I put Civil War first and stuff like that, but I'm not going to do the definitive ranking. I'm just going to put them in the tiers I feel like they deserve to be in. Spider-Man Homecoming. Almost called it No Way Home. That's not No Way Home. Homecoming. I like this movie a lot more than a lot of people do. I genuinely do. I feel like it's an incredibly fun movie. The Vulture is a great villain in my eyes. I like the Spider-Man suit. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man as a whole. I just feel like it's a fun movie. I don't have anything really negative to say about it. Is it as good as it could have been? No. Is it a fun movie to watch? Yeah. So again, I'm going to put it in the B. Now, Far From Home, on the other hand, I saw twice in the cinema, for whatever reason, and watching it a third time at home later on. I like Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, but as a movie, I feel like there are some genuine flaws, and it gets quite boring towards the middle. The twist of Mysterio being a villain was something that everybody expected. The final battle isn't particularly amazing. The ending of the movie is pretty cool, and how it leads into No Way Home. but I'm going to put this in the C. I don't hate it, but it's just kind of middle of the road for me. No Way Home, this is where it's going to get a little bit divisive, I reckon. I'm just going to put it straight in the B again. I really like this movie, but I don't particularly love it. In the most recent podcast, I talked about the re-release, and I mentioned that I like it, but the first hour or so I feel like is just okay, and the movie finally gets really good after the fight with Green Goblin in the apartment. So that goes there. Seeing all three Spider-Men together is a great moment, but the final battle I feel like is lacking slightly compared to something like Civil War with Iron Man versus Captain America, or the final battle in really any of the Avengers movies. It's kind of smaller scale despite the amount of characters that are involved, which I don't mind, but I feel like the final battle could have been a little bit more than it was. So we've got Black Panther now. This is a movie that I've only seen once. I like the soundtrack by Kendrick Lamar. It's a pretty good movie. Again, I feel like quite a lot of these movies are going to end up in the same bracket, but it's one of those movies where it has a great villain, the acting's great, some of the action's pretty good. I don't think it has really any of the best action in the MCU, but the story as a whole, sort of learning about Wakanda and the tribes and sort of how the Black Panther came to be. And of course, Chadwick Boseman isn't around anymore, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with Wakanda Forever. But this is, again, a B-tier movie in my eyes. It's pretty good, but it's not quite up there, you know? Captain Marvel, this is going right in fucking E tier. It could go in F. I absolutely hated this movie, and I still do. Not for any feminist hating reasons or anything like that. I just don't think it's a good movie. Brie Larson's a great actress. In this movie, she's a plank of wood. The humour in this movie did not land for me. The thing that pissed me off the most, that kind of stops it from being a D, is... Remember in Captain America the Winter Soldier, where Nick Fury was like, last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye? The revelation in this movie is that there was a cat alien, and he's playing with the cat alien, and it scratches his eye out. At the time, I took these movies a lot more seriously, and that pissed me off beyond belief. It really did. The Come As You Are montage as well just felt really forced, as great as that song is. No, not a good movie in my eyes really at all. But it could have been an F. But there were a couple of aspects in the movie that I didn't absolutely hate towards the beginning. Black Widow, again, this is a movie I didn't hate. I didn't particularly like it either. I didn't feel like it was essential, because obviously she died in Endgame. So giving her own movie after that didn't make any sense. I liked Yelena as a character. I still like her now, especially when she appears in Hawkeye. I feel like she's a fun character. But the movie felt more like an origin story for her rather than a Black Widow movie, which is kind of what everyone wanted maybe about 5 years before she died. So I'm going to put this in... I'll put it in the C, because I don't dislike it, but I don't think I'll watch it again. It's decent. It's okay in my eyes. Shang-Chi, one of the only Phase 4 movies that I actually enjoy. I'll just tell you straight away, this is going straight into B. The action in this movie is really good. I didn't like the final battle too much. It kind of ended a bit anticlimactic in my eyes. I was expecting it to lead up to something a little bit more than what we got, with a little bit more of the martial arts action we saw earlier on in the movie, but the fight scene in the skyscraper on the scaffolding, I think, is one of the best fight scenes in the MCU in recent memory. The one on the bus is pretty cool too. It was just one of those movies that I personally was not looking forward to at all. I went to see it just thinking, oh, it's an MCU movie, whatever, I don't really care about this one, I'll go see it, and I ended up being pleasantly surprised. So, B tier. The Eternals, on the other hand, now this is going straight in the F, because it's probably the worst MCU movie. 2.5 hours of characters that you don't give a shit about, action that's pretty bland. Some of the special effects look pretty good compared to some of the other MCU movies, but it's 2.5 hours of nothingness. I don't give a shit about any of the characters in this movie after watching it. I feel like most of the MCU is kind of forgetting that it even existed. I'm not sure if the second one's been scrapped. There were talks of it getting scrapped. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed to actually be scrapped or if it's happening or not. I don't like it, and I'll probably never watch it again. WandaVision I haven't seen. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going in E, because there were some good ideas there. I like some of the dynamics. I like the scene at the end, the fight scene where Anthony Mackie finally suits up as the new Captain America. I like that quite a lot. I like the dynamic between Bucky and Falcon. But at the end of the day, the whole plot point about, oh, no self-respecting man would ever want to be Captain America, and the whole sort of pushing that message onto people, I felt was really forced, and I absolutely hated it. It's not that you can't point stuff out like that in a comic book show or movie, but for me it really didn't work at all. He got gifted that shield by his friend who wanted them to take up the mantle, and now he's being lectured by a guy saying, oh, because you're black you shouldn't ever want to be Captain America, and basically pushing that idea onto people, and I hated that. So as much as I enjoyed a little bit of this show, there were quite a few aspects of it that I really didn't enjoy either. Especially the first few episodes as well. I feel like the first 3 episodes or so I just didn't really like that much. Iron Man 2. This is one that is quite nostalgic for me because I saw it in the cinema in 2010 with my dad. I liked it a lot at the time. Looking back on it now, not so much. It's got a lot of problems in it, as everybody knows. The fight scene and the suit in general that's used on the racetrack is a highlight in the early MCU in my eyes, but again, I'm probably going to have to put this in the D looking back on it. It's not great. Loki I haven't seen. What If I haven't seen. Hawkeye. Straight away I put it in the C, because I'll tell you why. So, I actually enjoyed Hawkeye. I really enjoyed the first five-ish episodes of Hawkeye quite a lot. I thought it was fun. Having Haley Steinfeld in it really helped because she's Haley Steinfeld. Call me. And I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh yeah, but at the end, the last episode really derailed it. It could have been like a high B for me, and then the introduction of Kingpin was so exciting. Just for them to turn him into a hulking ragdoll who rips doors off of cars, gets thrown about like a ragdoll, and that upset me as a major fan of Daredevil, and I know it upset a lot of other people as well. Like, the episode was going alright, up until they decided to completely ruin Kingpin, and I'm really scared of where it's going to go. The setup for Echo I thought was decent too. I like the mirroring of the comics where she shoots Kingpin as well. Obviously it's shown off screen, but I assume he did get shot. Like the show, but that last episode dragged it down from being sort of a solid B for me personally. Moon Knight is going in D, which may piss some people off, but when your show's called Moon Knight and you only get about 15 minutes of Moon Knight in your entire 6-hour show, you got a problem. Oscar Isaac's acting was genuinely great, but apart from that, I was not a fan of it. Ethan Hawke is a tremendous actor. In this, he was completely wasted in my eyes. So the only decent aspect of the show, in my eyes, is probably Oscar Isaac's performances. The story as a whole, I didn't love. The talking hippo thing, I thought was really, really stupid. The show sort of took itself seriously at points, and then went all fantastical with the talking hippo. Tonally, it just didn't work for me. And I can't remember, what's her name? The Mark Spector's girlfriend. Forgotten her name, but the whole thing of her becoming the first Egyptian superhero or something like that, and they make a big deal out of that. She saves Moon Knight's ass. It's just very, very MCU, and I didn't like it very much at all, but I did enjoy aspects of it, which is why it's not in the tiers below it. I enjoyed it more than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that's for sure, but I wanted more Moon Knight action. The suit looked cool and he barely wore it. Iron Man 3. This is going to piss some people off. I really like Iron Man 3. I like the twist. It's kind of funny I put it next to Shang-Chi because Trevor Slattery shows up in that as well. I was like 13 when this movie came out, and I enjoyed it back then. I still enjoy it now. I agree that some of the decisions are stupid, like Tony Stark giving his address to a terrorist. That was kind of stupid, but I love the suit in this movie. I like the humour for the most part in this movie. I just feel like it's a really fun movie, and I know a lot of people put it on the lower end of the MCU, but I've always enjoyed this movie, unashamedly. So it's going in the B tier. Feel free to hate me, but this is where it's going. The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. Kind of started the MCU off, but it's not great in my eyes. The last battle's pretty cool, but apart from that, up until that last battle, it's not a very fun movie in my eyes. It's going in the D tier. Nothing else to really say about it. Also, so's the first Thor movie. While we're here, because this movie's pretty fucking boring, for the most part. There's elements of it that are to do with Asgard and like the frost giants and stuff like that that are pretty interesting. But I've never been a fan of this movie. The dye job of Chris Hemsworth's eyebrows and stuff like that just looks really awkward as well. Don't like it. Thor, I think, probably has the weakest run of films in the entire MCU in my eyes. Thor: The Dark World is going in E tier because it's one of those movies that is completely pointless. Came out around the same time as Iron Man 3. I can't remember if it came out before or after, but it was the same year. So a lot of people look to 2013 as being a very, very disappointing year for the MCU. And on one hand, I can kind of see that. Thor: The Dark World was just... It just was what it was. It had one of the weakest villains of the entire MCU, and it just wasn't very entertaining. Thor Ragnarok is going up in the B again, because it's a fun movie. I like Taika Waititi for the most part. We'll get to that in a bit. This movie's just fun. You know, the humour landed for me for the most part. I enjoy Hela as a villain. I know a lot of people don't. They think she's kind of bland, but I enjoyed her quite a lot. I enjoyed Korg as well. Again, another character that people find annoying or find lacking. I like what they did with Hulk in this movie too. This is probably one of the last times that you actually get to see Hulk do something interesting or cool. So I'm going to put it solidly in the B tier. Captain America: The First Avenger. I think that Captain America has the strongest trilogy out of the MCU in my eyes, but this movie wasn't a great start in my eyes. I like some of it. I think it's an okay movie, but compared to Winter Soldier and Civil War and sort of some of the other movies that Captain America has been involved in, I do think it's on the weaker end. So I'll put it in the C tier, you know, because it's a decent movie. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. I just think that it's lacking compared to the rest of the trilogy, and once you've seen the other two movies, it kind of knocks the first Avenger down a little bit. The Winter Soldier, on the other hand, is going straight up in the fucking A tier. Hell yeah, man. This movie is like a spy espionage Mission Impossible type movie. Nothing really to dislike about this movie in my eyes in regards to the MCU. The humour's not too in your face. It's a little bit darker than some of the other movies. The fake out death of Nick Fury was effective before everyone started having fake deaths. The action scenes are handled pretty great. It's just one of those movies. This and Civil War are just great superhero movies in my eyes. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going in the C tier because I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, and I mentioned in a previous podcast that it's not great. There's nothing I particularly want to go back to, but then again, I don't think it's as bad as some of the other things that we have lower down on the list. So I think at the lower end of the C tier is fitting for it. Bruce Campbell's cameo was a thing that a lot of people didn't like, but it's one of my favourite parts of the movie. The whole Reed Richards getting torn apart thing and Black Bolt blowing the back of his brain out was really cool. That whole fight scene was interesting, even if the character decisions involved in making that scene happen are incredibly, incredibly dumb. It's an okay movie. Doctor Strange 1's definitely more enjoyable, though Wanda as a villain was really good too. But at the end of the day, them trying to redeem her by saying, oh, she's been through a lot. She murdered a lot of people. I don't like that talking point around her. Miss Marvel. Haven't seen. Don't want to watch it because I heard it's dog shit. And here we come to Thor: Love and Thunder. My voice is hoarse. I'm going to take a swig of water, then we'll talk about this film. Deadpool. Thor: Love and Thunder is dog shit. Absolutely fucking dog shit. Everything about this movie is awful, in my eyes. Just the more I think about it, the more angry I get. The editing, the special effects, the humour, the story had potential, but they even make Jane Foster's cancer into a joke. Just, what the hell were they thinking? And oh my god, I forgot the screaming goats. The amount of times those fucking goats scream in this movie. It wasn't funny the first time, and then 7 times later, guess what? It's still not funny. Christian Bale is completely wasted. He gets an okay amount of screen time. He should have had more, but he wasn't a menacing villain. He did the best with what he had. Apparently the best of his scenes got cut out of the movie for being too dark. The scene at the beginning of the movie with him finding like God in the forest, that was just, pardon me, it's really cheesy as well. The whole movie is just pure cheese, when this should have been a movie that had a bit more oomph and a bit more gravity to it. Just everything about it sucked. Jane Foster's death was fitting, but again, wasted potential there. Thor basically recruiting a bunch of kids and giving people his power so they can fight the monster was corny and stupid. I don't hate this as much as I dislike the Eternals. Actually, well, now do you think about it? The Eternals was just bland and really, really boring and pointless. Thor: Love and Thunder I absolutely fucking despise with every ounce of my being. There's nothing about this movie that I like. I laughed. I think I laughed once in the entire movie, and yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else positive I can say about this movie, but I don't think there is, because all of it was a wasted potential. The fake out death of Thor, not Thor, sorry, of Korg, was ridiculous too. It's a character that a few people enjoy, and you think he's dead, and then a minute later he's fine, he's a rock face, and then by the end of the movie he's met another rock creature called Dwayne, for whatever reason, so he's all happy together with Dwayne now. Just, I'm not laughing at the movie itself, I'm laughing at how ridiculous it is. Russell Crowe was great, actually, thinking about it. That's one more positive I can say. I really enjoyed his performance. Even though they made Zeus a joke, it was a joke that kind of landed for me. That was the one time in the movie I enjoyed. One time I laughed and I enjoyed that scene. So, Thor: Love and Thunder is going in the F tier. And people may think I'm overreacting, but I absolutely hated it. So that is my MCU tier list. Feel free to tell me how wrong I am and how much of a hater I am. I could do a DC one as well. I might actually just do that because that might be a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.